Hello, and welcome to episode 30 of HardcoreGaming101.net's top 47,858 games of all time podcast, where we objectively, definitively, and scientifically rank the games you nominate. My name is Xerxes, and I just optioned the movie rights to Marshall Bravestar. My panelists today are...
Hi, I'm Nick Debar.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Bobinator.
I'm Satang.
On this podcast, we have three rules. Rule number 1, all rankings are final, official, and scientifically accurate. Rule number 2, you can nominate one game at a time via Twitter by hitting me up at GC9X. Rule number 3, you can nominate games that have already been nominated, but don't nominate games we've already ranked. Check it out for yourself. See what games we've nominated, which games we've ranked at bit.ly/47kgames. And remember, if you want to guarantee that we will rank your game as fast as we possibly can, include that game in a 5-star review on iTunes and or Stitcher. And yes, if you've given us a 5-star review nomination on iTunes, you can do another one on Stitcher. It's a legit platform. Take it seriously. All right, our next game is Devil May Cry, which was nominated by 24-bit AGE on iTunes. So we fast-tracked it. I think this wasn't that long ago. Devil May Cry was, let's see, when was this released? It was released for the PS2 on...
2001?
It was 2001. It was like
yeah.
September or something. September or August, somewhere around there.
Normally we have these things written down, but this is the month of December.
Actually, if you have a look at the year 2001... this is an incredibly dense release period. It really doesn't matter when it came out because this
it's a lot of stuff.
Final Fantasy X came out like a month after Metal Gear Solid 2 came out, like almost just immediately after. Like this is just late 2001. Holy hell!
The year of PS2, like when it was clear that PS2 was going to be it.
It became the new best game after SSX.
Well, before we get going anymore, I think we have a special guest to join us who's going to be pretty much taking my place. He's the man, the myth, the legend, the Gunheart, who was I think, is this his the first time you've been on the new format?
Yes, it is.
Well, welcome back. So I'm going to bow out because, like most of the year 2001, this is Devil May Cry is somewhere in a haze of substance abuse. No, I'm just kidding. I just don't remember that much about it. But it's a cool game. Please rank it highly. I'll be back later.
We will.
Bye. I don't think you have to worry about that because it's Devil May Cry. So this game was pretty huge, I'd say. It launched Dante. It cemented the PlayStation 2 as the console to own. In many ways.
Pretty much created a new kind of action genre.
Yeah. Created a new genre.
It completely created a genre. Yeah.
A genre that we still don't really have a great name for. Yeah.
Well, I know Europeans tend to call it hack and slash. In Japan, it's called character action.
I always assumed that was like the correct name all this time.
And I believe Americans like to call it spectacle fighters. So
I think Yahtzee did that, and the jury.
Which is interesting because Yahtzee's from the same country I am from. So, he calls them spectacle fighters because he likes to make names up, I guess. But I do remember this being called hack and slash in local gaming magazines at the time. They were all, it's an action hack and slash and that sort of thing. I think people even maybe hinted this one was kind of survival horror-ish, but that was only because it was originally Resident Evil 4 and it shares a lot of thematic similarities and styles, except for the fact that you're a demon half-born thing with a giant sword and guns named Dante.
Yes, who was originally meant to be, and this is public knowledge because the director Hideki Kamiya wrote a weekly column in Famitsu about the development of this game for like 2 years. And it was originally going to be Resident Evil 4. You were playing as Wesker, whose like superhuman abilities had been introduced in Code Veronica, which explains, the insane acrobatic gunplay stuff that he would have been doing.
I think they must have transitioned that to did they transition away from it being Wesker or to it being Wesker? Because I believe there was also a different character you were potentially playing as.
There's a rumor, as I understand it, it was going to be Wesker. Shinji Mikami, the creator of Resident Evil, of course, said to Kamiya, his protege, "Okay, this is insanely awesome. It's just too crazy for RE. So make it a new IP."
It amuses me that they went with that, and then Resident Evil just went completely off the rails a short couple of years later, where it's just like woo, crazy. But this game is pretty wacky. Like it opens with a woman throwing a motorcycle at Dante and him exploding things and stuff.
Yes, it's a very Hideki Kamiya game. It's the first game he directed. No, I'm sorry, he directed RE2. It was the first game that he got to design on his own, and all the hallmarks of his games to follow are kind of there. You can see them in their proto stage.
Yeah. So what we're looking at, just I don't know if you're insane and you haven't played Devil May Cry and you haven't played any of its follow-up sort of styled games like Bayonetta, God of War, if you really want to push it, and all these games, you haven't heard of any of those. You basically run around with a sword, smacking guys in melee combat. You can knock them in the air. You can sort of semi-fly by shooting bullets at things, and you just sort of hover, or when you swing your sword in the air, you just magically stay up there. There's a lot of basically doing that over and over. There's giant enemies who are very, very large, which I think not entirely unique, but their take on large-scale enemies and the way you fight them in a much more sort of physical way. It wasn't just you just shot at them until their life bar disappeared, because most of them block, or they have weak spots that you have to expose by physically getting in close and hitting them. It's a very, very involved. It's not quite third person in this one, because it actually uses a Resident Evil style fixed floating camera in most places. But you have this huge scale of fighting that you haven't really seen before. That was, I believe, actually inspired by the Ocarina of Time. So that's an interesting sort of look in at the game.
Yeah, Kamiya, his favorite game series is Zelda, but
that explains Okami.
Yeah, exactly. But just to build on what you were saying, the emphasis on stylishness, and you're not just taking your enemies down, you're taking your enemies down in the most badass way possible with elaborate combos, was definitely informed by Capcom's fighting game team, which at this time was becoming much reduced, and huge amount of staff that had worked on their fighting games worked on DMC. So I think there's definitely a through line with that just stylish combo-ness, which perhaps could have come from a fighting game team.
In fact, I think it might very well be one of the first games to successfully translate the combat of a fighting game into a 3D action title. I mean,
I definitely agree.
Technically, you had the belt-scrolling beat-em-ups back in the day for fighting game-esque combat and a more traditional action game, but this was the first 3D game to have that level of combos and combat fluidity.
Definitely.
One thing I like about Devil May Cry is the amount of threat that every enemy in this game has. As we said, there's beat 'em ups, and this is definitely an evolution of the beat 'em up concept, but there are very few popcorn enemies in this game. There's very few throwaway enemies. Even the useless basic puppet, which are kind of really creepy and have a really nice invisible string effect that goes on for them, they're dangerous, because if you let one of them stand far away, it'll just start throwing knives at you. And if you're standing still, they will shred your health with these knives. And sometimes they give them shotguns. And if they shoot that at close range, it will wipe your life bar. And that's the basic enemy. And you can probably, if you're not paying attention, you can lose half, 3/4 of your health in one single combat instance against the weakest enemy in the game. And it only goes up from there in terms of challenge, which is kind of nuts.
One point I'd like to make real quick to backtrack just a little bit. There are two games that I'm wondering if might have inspired this one at all, and I wonder if you could answer that maybe. Rising Zan, the Samurai Gunman, and the Berserk game for the Dreamcast. I forget the exact title.
I mean, first, you got to pronounce it Rising Zan Samurai Man. Any other pronunciation is clearly wrong.
It's possible some of the game designers on the game may have played those games, but I know that from having had the privilege of working with Kamiya-san for years, is he does not play games. He plays no games that were produced after like 1991. So
he has an arcade in his house, correct, of a bunch of pre-90s games.
Yes, he does, and that is all he plays.
Huh.
So
I did not know that.
But somewhere Ocarina of Time fits in there because he definitely was inspired by that.
It does, but only because it was Zelda. He will play every Zelda. So I think a lot of that innovation, you can maybe point to earlier examples. I think most of it came right out of the dude's head.
That's also quite possible.
That pre-90s aspect also, I think, shows in the general character and setting. Like, I heard that Dante himself was heavily inspired by Space Adventure Cobra.
I can see that. Yeah. I mean, he doesn't have a gun arm, but
he's got red outfits. He has very similar hairdo.
He does.
And just the general kind of character archetype.
I hadn't thought about that, but yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt that there are elements in, I think, Devil May Cry, a lot of it has been cribbed or borrowed from things and put together in almost the perfect way in the way this game functions. Like, everything it borrows, everything it was influenced by, it all comes together and it's almost like, it all fits together almost perfectly in terms of how this game overall works. Yeah.
DMC for its time was almost a near perfect game. Like, there are virtually no criticisms I can level against it. Major ones, like maybe some camera issues.
I mean, I do have some that I'll throw out in rapid succession. Just not right now, but after you're done. Just so that we don't seem like we're completely blind to the fact that this game was,
Oh yeah, I mean, in retrospect.
Okay. One thing I do have to point out, though, that still impressed me to this day is the fact that this was a game that came out in 2001, and Dante has a fluidly animated, physics-driven trench coat, when you still have games these days where the coat is part of the character's leg animation.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, I mean, this is it's a great example of something that worked really well in the PlayStation 2 era. Was the games were simple enough that you could have features like that wouldn't break the game. The more complicated your models get, the more, sort of driven stuff you have, the more complex environments are. It's harder to do stuff like physics that don't get caught on things. Because like in this game, the hitboxes were nice and wide and everything is really nice and open. So they can do things like that. And it works really well. And the cape looks great. You don't even notice what it's doing, except it's like occasionally it's like, wow, that's cool. I like that. It looks good. And that's something that I think is true of this game overall. This is a phenomenal looking game. 2001, this game this would blow you away. And it's still, you play it and you're like, huh.
You'll play the pretty darn good PS3 HD remaster in it. It looks great. And
I was playing the original. Just for the record, I was replaying the game on the PlayStation 2 version.
I want to say that maybe the graphics are really informed by the actual level design, which for the most part is this really awesome, moody, gothic castle that, like, I don't know, starts out with like a sort of bell chiming the first level, sort of like an RE-esque atmosphere before you like go into some sort of weird mirror dimension and then go through caves, a pirate ship, and you return to the castle later and it's all like at nighttime and a lot more horrific than before. I love this game's gothic atmosphere, and that was an element that I want to say sort of coming out of its Resident Evil-esque roots. That it's
Definitely.
Very unique to the first. Yeah, it's unique to the first game, and it's sort of something that the later games in the series lost. And I'm going to give a hot take. It's just simply because of the atmosphere of this game, that the first one is actually my favorite of the entire series. Even more so than 3. A bit of a controversial opinion, but I stand by it.
the first also probably has the best enemy encounter design. Like, Dre, as much as I love it, the enemies are almost more like, beanbags for you to hit for high combo points when you get good enough at it. Whereas in the first, every enemy could be exceedingly dangerous, as Kyle pointed out earlier.
Yeah, like a Souls game, actually.
Yep. Yeah, which has really become a hallmark of that genre, at least in the good games, like Ninja Gaiden. Every enemy is dangerous. Bayonetta, every enemy is dangerous. You know, there's no cannon fodder in these games.
Which I think is really cool. That, you know, your character is a half demon. He is like in canon of the game, he's portrayed as like the most powerful guy ever. He's like calm, controlled, a bit cocky, but this guy is like super strong, and every encounter is like, whoa, I'm barely alive. I'm clinging to hoping that the next enemy I kill will drop me some health because I keep getting smacked around. And you've got the devil trigger, which gives you a little bit of health back. And I guess we might as well mention that there is a system of the way the power up works in this game is really cool. I mean, it was great in 2001. It's not a common feature today, where when you hit enemies or when you use taunt, which the English manual that I have doesn't even tell you that taunt exists. It specifically says that the R2 button does nothing, which is an absolutely bizarre thing.
What a surprise from a Western manual.
Yeah, it just says R2 button, doesn't do anything, which is really interesting. But when you hit enemies or when you taunt, does it happen when you get hit? I can't quite remember. If you get hit, you get a little bit of devil trigger.
I believe so.
I thought you got a little bit. So yeah, and when you get enough energy, you can activate Devil Trigger mode, which gives you some extra moves that you have to spend the in-game currency on to actually basically activate, and you become way stronger, and you can't really be interrupted or knocked around. So you get this occasional burst of just extreme power, basically, where it's just like you press the Devil Trigger button, you're like, "Not today, suckers!" and then you just murder everything, and it's this exhilarating, like, I am in control now sort of power that really, really makes this game shine. Great effects, too.
I love how, depending on your skill level, the Devil Trigger is something completely different. I mean, if you're newish at the game, haven't quite gotten the hang of it, the Devil Trigger is more like a desperation move. It's how you get yourself out of a tight spot. Whereas if you know the game inside out, can master the combos, etc., it's more like a quick burst of extra strength you can use practically whenever you want.
I think it's interesting because it is definitely part of Kamiya's design philosophy. He very much loves mastering games, completing games, destroying a game inside and out, and that you can see every ounce of that in Devil May Cry. And sometimes I think to its detriment a little bit. This game is incredibly unfriendly to a beginning player. It really is not fair. This game doesn't really prepare you for the challenges that it's going to throw at you in about 2 levels. As an example, because it's kind of weird the way the game's sort of setup works. First level, you barely fight anything. The second level, you fight some... I said the puppets are dangerous, but they're not too dangerous. And then you fight some skulls. And, okay, that's cool. Then you fight a giant freaking spider lava monster who will kick your ass 6 ways till Sunday repeatedly, and that's the difficulty curve in the game.
You get to that first boss, and it's like, I didn't sign up for this. What?
And it's like the combat just completely shifts. You're just like, oh, I guess that's it. Like, I just get my ass kicked now. Like, that's the game then.
Yeah, that's what we call the wake-up call boss in TV troops parlance.
Yeah, indeed.
Also, not a boss, but the shadows. These, like, dark tiger morphy thingies with, you have to shotgun up close to expose their core, but they're really fast and vicious.
You can shoot them with the pistol. You can wear them down with the pistol.
Oh,
Ebony and Ivory.
Yeah, but it's
definitely the point where you start trying to spam arrow aid.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's, that's an unlockable move, I believe, which is the other little criticism I have. The game makes it very hard to learn what your moves do, and it doesn't really want you to know what your moves will do before you buy them, is the other little sort of main criticism I have. Bayonetta does this, where it actually lets you
in Bayo, yeah.
That thing else that kind of bothers me is that there's no in-game tutorial or any mention in the manual that the combos are timing-based. Like, you think you just have this one 3-hit combo, but it turns out you have 3 completely different combos depending on when you pause during your attacks.
I will say that's an interesting way of giving the player more moves, less buttons.
Oh, I love it from a mechanical standpoint. I'm just saying,
this game
tells you this anywhere.
If this game had like a training room like Bayonetta where it was loading, that would have been so much nicer.
Yeah, that was a big priority on Bayo was to have a good tutorial, because of course that was a huge complaint about DMC is nothing ever tells you really the extent of what Dante can do.
Yeah, it definitely feels like, obviously Kamiya and the designers on the team were like, yep, I know everything about this game. This is fantastic. And then you hand the controller and remember, this is someone in 2001 who hasn't even approached a hack and slash spectacle character fighter before. And they pick this up and they're just like, what the?
Yes.
Like, I mean, this game is fantastic for 2001. Like, it blows almost every game before it away in terms of combat. Like, it's just easy peasy. Third-person games, fighters like this would never be the same post-DMC. But it's just like...
As we've said, completely created that genre.
And that's pretty impressive. You can't change your guns without going to the menu, which is a little bit of a pain. I love the FMVs you get when you select the guns, where it's just like, you get like these massive over-the-top like graphics of them like exploding and shooting like bullets and like reloading things. But it is kind of annoying if you actually, want to use the pistols a bit, and then you can't quickly switch to the shotgun for a close range and then go back to the pistols or anything. You have to pause the game, go to the menu, pick the gun, watch the graphics. Then it's like, come on, guys, You can switch between the 2 devil modes, which I love the gauntlets in this game. Some of my favorite gauntlets in any game of this genre. I love the Frit. It's just like punch, charge up this massive kick, and it's just like smack. It's like, that's the beatdown.
The Ifrit was so cool that every other DMC afterward would have a gauntlet equivalent, except for 2 because nobody likes it.
We don't talk about it, do we?
No, let's not go there.
I guess it's worth mentioning that every DMC game after this one was made without Kamiya and kind of without his permission or consent. And I know it's Capcom owned the property, but they really just kind of like, oh, thanks, Kamiya. Okay, bye. And then they just made a bunch of DMCs without him for some reason, which is a little weird.
Well, it was so successful, and as we know,
because he didn't even know that they were making DMC 2. Like, they just handed it to someone else. Like, he's just like, what?
This is a great story. I imagine everyone listening to this probably knows, but Kamiya was working on his next project and heard through someone at the company, oh yeah, they're making DMC 2. And he's like, what? No, that's my game. And I think that contributed to his eventual departure from Capcom, but that's another story.
So do you think it's about time to rank this?
Gunhard, did you have anything else to say just before we rank it? Because I know you were just trying to chime up before.
I think the other thing about it is that not just from the fighting game aspect of the combat, but this was probably one of the first games that really managed to bring the combat you'd see in Japanese animation and comic books to a video game.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean,
one
this
where
game...
the player had complete control, not just pre-done animations.
Yes, this is following in, and I mentioned this completely off podcast, but, this is late for it, but this also still managed to come in with the sort of the Matrix, like just that kind of general cool bullets, akimbo guns, sort of slow motion, all of that. This is probably the closest thing you got to a good Matrix game, to be perfectly honest. Like,
well, there was Matt's Pain as well, but
I know there's Max Payne and there's Devil May Cry. And I think they both came out the same year, actually. I think
It's
Max
funny.
Payne was
I remember there being two ads, one for Max Payne and one for Devil May Cry, and running in the same magazine, both featuring the protagonists pointing their guns at the camera, using the in-game models. And I just remember the thing that I took away the most was that the one for Devil May Cry, Dante's fingers were actually on the triggers, while for Max Payne, they were clicking through the guns.
I mean, I love Max Payne. I adore that game as well. But this game does combat a bit better overall. It's not just a third-person shooter; it's a whole other thing.
It's gonna go pretty high, I assume.
I mean, I would say it's got to be above Final Fantasy VII. That's just that's.
Ooh, them's fighting words.
No,
I mean,
I'd probably place it above there too. I do like the Final
it's got to be
Fantasy
at least
series
there. I just don't know if it needs to go any higher. Is what I'm wondering.
Okay.
I think it would probably go higher because while Final Fantasy VII was aesthetically groundbreaking, gameplay-wise, it wasn't all that different from what came before.
Indeed, it was 6 just really pretty.
Yeah, it was mostly for its style that was more recognized, I think.
Well, Devil May Cry had both style and substance and pretty much created a new genre in the process.
So let's jump it a step higher. Let's look at Bionic Commando.
Ooh.
Oh, boy. Oh, crap. You're talking about my favorite.
What about
Capcom
above
game.
Earthbound?
Oh.
Whoa. He's pushing even higher. He's just forget it. I'm just taking it up.
I love Devil May Cry, but wow, how high do we want to put it?
So I will read off the where we're looking at in the regions for those who don't ever check the list at home, and why would you? We kind of have Metal Gear Solid at number 4, followed by Lode Runner, online The Mad Monk's Revenge, but I think it's just generally Lode Runner. Earthbound, Bionic Commando, Toe Jam and Earl, and then Wario Land 4. That's the current place we're looking at in there.
I'm going to be controversial and say that
Oh.
might be number 3. Yeah.
Wow,
This keeps going, keeps going up. I mean, okay, so what we have is you have Devil May Cry, which kind of indisputably created a genre. There were games before it, but this is the codifier of the genre. It definitely did that. I would say the game has aged quite well. I don't think it has too many, other than the kind of little annoyances and foibles. I don't think there's that many issues with the game. Now the question, I guess, is Bayonetta, I think, is generally felt to have surpassed the
It's
Devil May Cry
superior
game.
in every way. Yes.
So that is a tough one, but obviously it would not exist without Devil May Cry. It has to have Devil May Cry.
Indeed.
There's no question that it led directly into it. So really, it's a question of do we think Devil May Cry is good enough and important enough to be really high, and we've already got it pretty high. So personally, I would definitely say probably above Bionic Commando, simply due to its heavy impact of the fact that it completely solidified a genre.
Yes.
And really, it went with what Ocarina of Time did, and then kind of really took third person fighting combat and really pushed it to the next level. Really, because obviously games have been taking from Devil May Cry, even if they're not in the exact genre, they've been, if they use the lock-on system, they use that sort of combo system, they're really looking from Devil May Cry. So then it sits below Earthbound, and the question, I think, is it better than Earthbound?
Well, that is such a great question. Is
I can't do this. This is too much, man. I'll let you guys speak. I'll have to think about this.
Okay, so is the original Mother more important than Mother 2?
Right.
Xerxes would argue yes, but he's not here right now, so we'll judge our own metric.
I would also argue yes.
I feel that
Okay.
Earthbound is a much better game, but I guess that means it's not as important, or it just doesn't. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to do with its importance.
I mean, for me, and this is just me, what I like about Devil May Cry is it's also designed to be replayed. It can be revisited quite readily over and over.
As is every Kamiya game, yeah.
Yeah, which I do think is quite a mark in its favor, because you can sort of just go back to those games. You can just keep going back to it. The experience is like the first time through is good, and then every other one is also good or great. Like it does actually hold up. Like it's not, I've finished that game, I don't need to play it again.
I think it probably gets better on replays because it's definitely a game that's better the better you are at it.
Yeah, it only gets better the more you play it. It did also, as we've said, establish a genre. Earthbound was playing with genre conventions of an existing genre, which DQ and FF had established, whereas this game sort of invented one. I personally would probably place it above Mother 2.
I'm okay with that.
Earthbound.
All right, so before we lock it in, let's just say, all right, well, there's Lode Runner.
It's like climbing Everest right now.
Well, when it gets this high up the list, I really want to, I want it to fight for every spot. I want it to be like, can it do it?
Yeah,
is it going to fight?
We definitely can't screw around with when it's like entering the top 5 almost. But
yeah,
it's a gauntlet to get up this numbers.
Oh, is DMC better than Lode Runner? Wow.
I don't know, because Lode Runner has such a long legacy. I mean, so does DMC, but
DMC's legacy will just continue. It just keeps going.
Yeah, it is not stopping anytime soon. What particular version? Because
this one we have Lode Runner Online, the Mad Monk's Revenge, which is the kind of definitive PC release. Is generally, which is arguably the best version of Lode Runner. It really depends on your personal taste, but that's the one that we had on the list here. We haven't done this in a little while, and I am willing to flip a coin on this one because I don't even know if I am.
I'm gonna recuse myself because I cannot. This is just too tough because they're so different, and both games were so groundbreaking at their time of release.
See, because my thinking, and the only thing I have here is I don't think DMC beats Metal Gear Solid. That's my.
I would say that's the stopping point, personally.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
I'm glad that we've got a stopping point. So the question is it go below Lode Runner, above Lode Runner, or do we flip a coin and leave it to the fates? Really?
I'm back, and it goes below Lode Runner. Damn it!
The Lode Runners. You son of a bitch! I knew that would happen.
Can we hear
I've been waiting for this guy to show up and be like, I really like Lode Runner. Forget you guys.
I am okay with that. DMC.
I'm not
so important.
If that's that, then that's that. And Lode Runner has been spared and will remain in the top 5 position. So that puts DMC below Lode Runner Online, above Earthbound or Mother 2.
I didn't expect it to get that high, but I'm pleasantly surprised.
Me neither.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Thanks for Xerxes for showing up to just put a game where he wants it, as you do.
That's what I do. It's my show, damn it. Okay, our next game is Octopus, which was nominated by @Gidzu on Twitter. Octopus was developed by Nintendo EAD and published by Nintendo for the Game & Watch, or rather not for the Game & Watch, as a Game & Watch game. Earliest release date and territory I have is July 16th, 1981 in Japan.
Is this the oldest game we've covered? Zookeeper is 82, I think.
Yeah, it might be the oldest game. So Octopus is a game where it's a game like where you can. There's other ways of playing this game than besides getting a Game and Watch, and you can always play basically, I think, the original version of it some way or another. There's a Game and Watch gallery. I think it's number 3 or 4 or something like that.
It's
Game Boy.
It's in Game and Watch gallery. I believe the original Game & Watch gallery, Game & Watch 1, and it's also in the Game Boy Advance Game & Watch. And the Game Boy Advance Game & Watch is probably the only one you'll bother playing because it has pretty much most Game & Watch games, and it has a bunch of other modern versions. So it's probably the one that you're going to play.
And then there's, I think they put it out in some special edition form.
Yeah, it's also on the
3DS.
DS versions.
Yeah.
It has a very, very special edition, which I'll mention right now. Game & Watch DS2 or something, and what that is it's actually Parachute and Octopus, and there's a special game mode where you play Parachute, collect the dudes, and then it switches to Octopus, and you use the dudes to get.
Yeah, that's right. That is very cool. So it uses the 2 screens, right?
Yeah, use the 2 screens to make to make Octopus into a 2-screen game. Kind of. I mean, it's a neat idea.
It's maddening to play it that way, but I think that version also does the one where it like mimics the LCD sound effects type. The LCD games sound effects and stuff like that. Like you can switch to that mode, I believe.
Yeah,
one of them you can.
Those ones are about as close to accurate as you can get. Obviously, the only real way to get accurate is to get an original thing. Because obviously, if you've never seen an LCD thing, I don't know. Maybe we have some like 15-year-old listeners who are like, "What's an LCD game?"
Okay, so we should explain that because it's about all you can do with this game to talk about.
Yeah.
So before Game and Watch, really, to my knowledge, I'm not sure there were LCD games, or if there were, they didn't take off.
Yeah, Genyo Takeda pioneered the handheld LCD game.
Yeah, what happened was he saw someone like dicking around on a calculator phone, well, not calculator watch. When they were bored, they were just like tapping on it.
A train, yeah,
and he's just like, you could make that into like a thing.
You can make a game out of that.
And that's what they did. They released Ball.
Right. So, just so the kids understand what we're talking about here, like when you talk about a LCD, which stands for Liquid Crystal Display, it is basically like you have a film that has a pattern set up on it, and it can only do so. When you look at an old school calculator, I guess calculators are still made like this, but you look at a calculator, it's like they've got the basically there's the lines that all connect, so you can have all 8 lines connected, or 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 lines connected, and you've got the number 8, right? So you can make those shapes any shape you want, and that's what they did. Is they used essentially calculator. I guess it's a microprocessor, right? It was like those had become cheap enough at that point where you could. There's actually a very good article or series of articles in a Japanese magazine from several years ago that you could find online, translated by I believe I think it's in like I think her name is Glitterberry, her nom de guerre, who translated some of them anyway, and then the rest you could do Google Translate, and you'll pretty much get the gist of it. But they talk about how the engineers at Nintendo, when they were still kind of focused on making toy type things, were looking at like what is the most high tech thing we can mass produce cheaply, and so they looked at there was like a big race in Japan in the early 70s of like who can make like the best cheapest calculator for mass production, things like that. And all that hard work having been done by 1981 or 1980 or something, you could look at and say, oh no, we could the work has been done. Like this stuff is cheap now. We can just repurpose this technology to make a game. And so you've got these, instead of, having lines to create the digits on the numbers or the components of the numerals, you just have pictures. And so with Octopus, it's like one is the main part of the octopus, like the head of the octopus, and then there are like segments of its legs stretching down into the ocean, and there's a series of. I'm sorry, I just smacked my microphone.
Yes,
I'm actually making the hand motions now. Like,
are you making the tentacle writhing? Because that's like what this game does.
I'm more like making like the different like little slots for the character space.
No one can see you like indicating anything.
It's important. Like, if I'm not feeling it, Cal, if I'm not feeling it, the audience isn't hearing it.
We need to include like a GIF or something that people can download so they can see you.
Well, check it out on YouTube. Check it out on YouTube.
For the most part, people will be familiar with Mr. Game & Watch in the Smash Brothers series, and he has the final Smash, which is the Octopus, because of course it is. Why not? So yeah, you've got a slot of divers, and the game is played simply by pressing left and right. And one puts you further underwater, one helps you get out of the water.
Right.
And the simple gameplay is that there is a treasure chest at the furthest right point that you can go. And every time you press right into that, you gain a point. And you can return to the boat where you start, which is probably the neatest part of the game, by just mashing left.
It's really amazing how, and the tentacles of the octopus are extending and retracting at different, and then as you get further into the game, they go faster. That's it. That's the game. So, the interesting thing about the game is even when you watch somebody, there are YouTube videos of people playing like the original LCD game, and you can see it, and it's like actually there's a fair amount of like pretty good animation that goes into this, that it really does look good. Like, it's very smooth.
The Game & Watch games are very thoughtful. It's probably what sets them apart from LCD games after them. The effort that the Nintendo team put into making the game just feel nice and proper and all fit together works really well, considering that this wasn't up against any other handhelds. They could have pretty much dumped anything on the market, and it probably would have sold okay. Yeah, right from the onset.
This is like probably the 10th or 11th game they did for the Game & Watch format, right? So
I like that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did any of you play the I guess you'd call the remake on the Game & Watch Gallery Collection for the Game Boy?
I did.
Yeah, I think we all must have. I mean, it's right there for most people if you pick it up.
What strikes me most about the Game & Watch games is not their just very simply brilliant game design, but the art design. Those very specific character designs, which I'm not super familiar with LCD games prior to Game & Watch, but they all presented a very cohesive visual design.
I think what we have here is Nintendo was obviously somewhat famously a toy company to an extent before. And so Nintendo have taken their sort of knowledge of iconography and like art and toy design and box packaging design and went, all right, let's take this kind of art and just make it part of the game. And every single game is in its own way, looking at it, it's like a box design, and it looks really nice. Octopus is not my favorite Game & Watch game, but it might be my favorite visually, because it's a very well-balanced game visually. You have the octopus, he occupies a huge space of the screen. The divers look great, the tentacles coming across the whole screen to get you. It's a really nice-looking package. I'm sure in 1981 it would have been just like, this is really cool, because there was nothing. You didn't have anything. Your choice is, I can do the crossword, or I can play Game & Watch. Like, those are your options about.
The other cool thing about the Game & Watch games is that each one was, of course, the hardware. So the number of buttons and stuff was specific to that game. So for this game, you had 2 buttons, left and right, as we said. But for other games, they invented a D-pad, which is the very first D-pad. It's you can look up the patent in the United States Patent Office. You see it.
It is called the Juji key, and Nintendo still owns it to this day.
Yeah,
I don't. They own it, but I don't think they can enforce the.
Well, I mean, look at your PlayStation D-pad. Not the same.
I think the form factor they own, but like the mechanical aspect of it, that expired maybe 5 or 6 years ago, because
I should.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong.
But I was just going to say,
feeling that you see a lot of non-Nintendo controllers, the D-pad got way better suddenly, very suddenly, and I think it's because there was something expired at a certain point.
Because I don't own Octopus. I wish I did, but I do actually have a couple of Game & Watches, and you'd be surprised how like tactile and functional the controller is. Like to this day, it still feels pretty good to like physically have like, these things in your hand. It feels
like a Nintendo D-pad,
and it's pretty damn good. So Octopus, all I can really say is I'm going to talk a little bit, just a tiny bit about the actual gameplay. Like there's a couple of neat things, like the way the tentacles are designed. The further you go into the water, the shorter the tentacles are. Like the very, very end tentacle is only 3 blocks long, so it comes out really quick. But the one furthest away from you is the longest, so that it kind of takes a lot longer. So you have to kind of mentally occupy how fast.
That's the one I always end up getting snagged by.
Well, I believe the very first tentacle can split. It can either go directly towards the boat, or it can go at an angle. So it's like there's even this like little extra touch there.
Exactly. You wouldn't think, like, there's so much thought that went into this little microscopic game that it really have to give it to him, because there were a lot of real turds put out on the LCD handheld market after the Game & Watch kind of had its stage.
I'm just going to go ahead and mention the Doug game, where you press Doug to Doug.
Hey, the Doug game has the Doug button, and that justifies the entire genre, really.
I mean, but you still see stuff like this. Like technically, like although the HG101 website tries to be as complete as possible, that like, there's certain things that you just won't get because nobody's going to find like the Double Dragon 3 Tiger LCD handheld, because nobody kept it. It was garbage, you know?
Well, I'm sure like no one's going to bother to buy one and look at it, and we don't have the insane amount of time and funds to sort of dedicate our lives to LCD games.
Patreon.com/HG101.
I do kind of wish...
Help us out.
You can't really emulate them due to the way the hardware works, but I wish somebody would try to like maybe recreate them for people to play.
Well, the Game & Watch stuff is mostly there, right?
I mean, most of what you can play, the Game & Watch galleries, you don't get the physicality of the LCD screen, and it's the same with like the Vectrix and CRT monitors and things. There is no emulation that will give you the physicality of the system. It's not physically possible, and that's a little bit of a shame. But the thing about Octopus is I don't think it's the best of the Game & Watches. I think it's kind of in the middle-ish. I think it has a couple little issues, like this one specifically, because you're mostly just trying to get treasure. You basically just mash get treasure and then dodge tentacles. You know, some of the other ones, even when you look at ball, you're kind of trying to balance the different balls that are on screen. With fire, you're trying to not let people hit the ground, but also trying to keep an eye out on all the people that are entering the screen.
Right.
Octopus feels a little bit kind of awkward in that regard.
Pretty one-dimensional, and quite literally, but also like in game sense.
Compared to some of the other ones, which get a little bit bigger. The as Bob mentioned a little earlier, there is a remake that Nintendo did themselves, where you now have to. It loses the LCD jumping because you physically walk and you play as Mario, and you slow down the more treasure you have, and you can throw treasure at the tentacles. I don't know if I actually prefer that version, but it's an interesting little take if you get that opportunity.
It is. I mean, look, any way you can play a Octopus, or what are the other ones?
I mean, Octopus will take like less time out of your life than listening to us talk about Octopus. That's
true.
That's the truth of Octopus.
You would have put down Octopus by the time we. Where should we rank Octopus? Like, this is going to be.
What I like about Octopus is that it's one of the only Nintendo and Game & Watch games where someone gets choked out by an octopus. Like, that happens. It's really violent. That octopus gets you. He's like, I'm killing you. Yeah. And then you die.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I think something about the octopus, at least in the classic version, actually does kind of scare me a little bit. Octopuses are just creepy in general. I'm not going to lie.
It's a giant octopus. It's pretty damn creepy.
So, I mean, I think we got to put it above a lot of games that just kind of suck at doing what they do. So, because Octopus does not suck at doing what it does. Like, it's...
No, it's really good at what it does. My problem is it's not kind of like, it's not the definitive Game & Watch, and it's not the first Game & Watch. That's the only challenge that I have personally.
I can see that.
Like, if it was Ball, I would just, I would arbitrarily put Ball extremely high because it is the Game & Watch. If Ball failed, Game & Watch would have ended, and that was, that's a big deal.
I would put Octopus right above Revolution X, right below Rainbow Islands, because I feel like Rainbow Islands, as frustrating as it can be, has gameplay potential that you can't get on a calculator, which is essentially what Game & Watch is.
I mean, that's a challenge of Game & Watch.
Islands.
Because Game & Watch is, it's not going to beat a bunch of games, because it is like, you have like 5 positions or 6 positions that you can stand in, and like the game will last like, you probably play this game for 5 minutes and never touch it again in your life, most likely. But it was a completely different era. Like 1981, the Game Boy didn't exist. Even the concept of having a digital game in your hand was mind-blowing.
Right.
That was
it was futuristic.
And I can't hold its gameplay against it, but it's
no,
not.
I'm not.
If
I'm
you're
not
gonna
holding
play,
it.
yeah, no.
not,
If you're gonna play a game, though, you're not gonna.
Yeah, this is one of those examples of like if you could only pick one or the other, and that would in the other one you would never ever get to play again. It would still be out there somewhere, but you wouldn't get to play it. I mean, I think almost anyone would choose Rainbow Islands because Rainbow Islands, like I said, very frustrating. Not it's it does what it does. It's got there's some level of depth to it, and Octopus can be really frustrating too. By the way, like it's not. There's a lot of times where you're like, why didn't I make it? Why did that tentacle just happen to extend right? And there's only so much you can do with it, and that's not a game design problem. That's just a limitation of it's not animated so much as it is like it's animated in the sense that you could make a game out of like a PowerPoint slideshow in a way. Yeah. And you could make a game almost it's slightly more intricate than that, but only slightly. And
a Game & Watch game is, like so inherently linear because of what you can display on the screen. Versus something like Rainbow Islands, which has a...
well, Rainbow Islands has scrolling. No Game & Watch game can scroll.
Right.
It's like these basic mechanics that like every other game.
I'm just
can
saying
take
that like
of.
a lot of Rainbow Island or a lot of Octopus's like biggest strengths. Like I love the amount of such as it is, visual storytelling that goes into this game. It's pretty good because like you
look at the game and you know what to do.
Divers, you know what's going on. Like you can see like, oh, that's the octopus's tentacle. Like everything is very well represented. You can look at the play field and understand what you're supposed to do in that sense. That it's like many other very old school games where you could look at it and you kind of understand what the goal is and. It's not animated. Well, it's very crudely animated, but it looks
tentacles
good.
Are smartly animated, and the little graphics of the diver.
Really
every single step feels like a step. It's really nicely done. Anyway, below Rainbow Islands is fine with me.
Okay,
right.
We're done. Our next game is Ape Escape, which was nominated by @PixelPedro on Twitter. It was developed by SCE Japan and published by Sony Computer Entertainment, SCE, right? For the PlayStation. Earliest release date in territory was May 31st, 1999 in North America. True.
Was that not the very first game to make use of the
DualShock?
The DualShock.
Might not have been the first to use it, but definitely the first that absolutely required it. You cannot play this without the DualShock.
Yeah, no.
Can I confirm it has to be the DualShock? You can't use the dual analog. Is that correct?
No, you can use the prior to DualShock dual analog. Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to double check because I know it says DualShock compatible, needs a DualShock, but Sony released the little regarded dual analog before that, which was, as you would expect,
Indeed.
the exact same, but without the vibrating qualities. So not as good, but still a good controller if you happen to have one. So Ape Escape is a game where you catch apes that look suspiciously like monkeys, and they have stolen a time machine and have accidentally been given super intelligence through the use of I can't really remember what the name of their hats are, but I don't care. They're just
helmet. I remember
Pink
that
Point.
somehow.
Yeah, it's a weird name, isn't it? Like Peak Point. Is that like a Japanese translation thing? They're just like, yeah, let's just go with that. But yeah, so they have an evil boss monkey who has white hair and is super evil, and his name is Spectre. And his plan is to basically switch the roles of humans and apes or monkeys or whatever. I mean, they keep calling them apes, but they're clearly monkeys.
Chimpanzees, even. For some reason, Spectre reminds me of Stripe from Gremlins. Just something about the white hair is. No,
I think there's definitely elements of that. There's actually a lot of elements of Gremlins, really, now that you mention it.
I was going to say,
love that film. But
I was going to say it reminds me more of Pokemon, especially that Spectre's basically Mewtwo from the movie.
Well, you got to catch them all, right?
But no, like the monkeys do kind of. I'm going to say monkeys and apes interchangeably. I apologize to people who realize they're different. But these things look like monkeys. They just they don't look like apes.
Do what's easy for you. Just keep it going.
But yeah, so they mostly just dick around, and they're supposed to have some grand plan, but most of the monkeys are just kind of loafing around on beaches or freezing to death in an ice age. So it's pretty funny. Yeah, so you play as Spike. God damn, I hate the main character in this game. He's
yeah,
it's his haircut, isn't it?
Well, so his name is Spike. His personality trait is he has spiky hair. That's it. Like, he has nothing. He's like the most. He would be less boring if he was more generic. That's how boring this goddamn character is.
Story is not the foremost element of this game, or probably the series, I'm sure.
The real star of this game are the apes. It's pretty clear that Sony, right from the get-go, was like, the apes are what people are going to like from this game, because they're adorable and so charming. I love their crazy, big-eyed faces.
I really love the idea of the monkeys in general, because they basically work like the stars in Mario 64, only they're their own characters who actually react to you, the player.
You got to run around the platforming levels, and when you get near the apes, sometimes they'll notice you, and they'll run around screaming in just start shouting, and they'll run around throwing bananas to trip you, and some of them have machine guns and rockets, and they'll try and murder you. And it's really great that they have this huge charmingness to the enemies in this game. The protagonist is just the most white bread.
Those characters, of course, were so popular that of course they showed up in Metal Gear Solid 3.
No, I played all the missions, and that was a really fun mode.
Well, that was a cross reference, because the monkeys have Metal Gear stuff in Ape Escape 2, right?
Yes.
I think there might even be some Splinter Cell stuff. I think they have the night vision goggles in one of the Ape Escapes, maybe. I'm not 100% sure, but there's a lot of fun. The apes have a massive amount of spin-off games. There's more spin-off games than there are mainline games in this franchise, although most of the spin-off games stayed in Japan because I guess we don't like ape monkeys. So the main part of this game is it is a somewhat typical PlayStation-style platformer. It's not a big, open, massive like Banjo-Kazooie or Mario 64 world. It's a lot more kind of boxed in, a little bit more focused. You got a bunch of individual areas separated by little transition hubs. The draw distance is not fantastic, but the game looks fantastic. One of the best, outwardly best-looking PlayStation games. And I think in the sense that, this game doesn't feel like it's using a lot of tricks or gimmicks. It's not trying to fool you into thinking it looks better than it is. It's just crisp, good quality textures, good quality models, fantastic animation on the monkeys. They have so much life to them. And the music is phenomenal. Every stage has a fantastic theme that's kind of thematically tied. And the main gimmick is that instead of just, as Bob said, instead of just finding stars, you actually have to catch monkeys. But you have a bunch of tools to catch monkeys.
And we should probably talk about that a bit.
Yes.
The thing with... You don't get different abilities and such in this game. Instead, you get different gadgets, as Cal said. Now, the thing is, you can hold 4 of these at once assigned to one of the face buttons, and that's where the controls come in. You do not use the X button to jump, and you do not use the face button to do things. Instead, you use the left stick to move around, and the right stick controls whatever it is you're holding.
Which is usually 360 directional. Not always, but a lot of the tools are 360 directional. So you want to attack in front of you, you swing in front of you based on the screen position, I believe, or it's a character position. I've completely forgotten. I know how to play this game. I played it for this. But yeah, so you have like a 360 degree control. So you've got a club for clubbing monkeys, which is always fun to just hit the monkeys. You've got a time net because they are lost in time. So you have to send them back to the correct time. You have a radar, which is a fantastic item and just like such an excellent piece of tool because it tells you roughly where the monkeys are, which is really helpful in a collect 'em up style game, that it will actually tell you where you need to go. But it plays like a kind of a hot cold sort of system where you kind of aim it and you sort of point it at the monkeys and then it gets, beep, 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 beep. And so you actually have to find the monkeys. And then you press a button and it will actually show you that monkey. And they have this, tells you their stats. You can see what they can do. And then it has a little one-line description, which is almost always amusingly just kind of like a bizarre trait that the monkey has. So, some of them will be like, has brain freeze, is reading your mind, is lazy, super angry. Like, it's just like, it really adds like some like just lighthearted fun to the game and sort of the situation. The game never really takes the threat of complete human eradication particularly seriously. And there are some other tools, like you get a little mini RC car, which is really cool. You can hover around using a helicopter sort of weird paddle thing. And the interesting thing about that is you actually have to rotate the controller as if you're spinning a helicopter in order to activate it. And you keep spinning it in order to keep helicoptering, which is cool. And you've got the hula hoop, which also does a similar thing, but it replaces a run button. I found that actually really frustrating because the hula hoop pisses me off. It's kind of hard to move where you want to go and spin the hula hoop to activate it. And it feels like the hula hoop is really picky about how you spin it. And it takes too long to activate. And I actually messed myself up a couple of times playing it out. So, but it is a very interesting idea. It's one of the few platformers around that instead of just dedicating the right stick to a kind of banal camera duty or something, instead you have, it does something. You actually have tools that you use with the right stick. Oh, and you get the slingshot, which is a nice little first-person weapon that you can, gives a little bit of verticality to the game.
This is my question. So with analog controls, with Nintendo, it was, of course, Mario 64. With Sega, it was Knights. And with Sony, it was this game. Which would you say utilized this new control scheme to its greatest?
Mario.
I mean, the question with Ape Escape, I think, is when you look at it, it's clear that they were kind of unsure what to do with both control sticks, I think is the big thing. Like, pretty much everything in the game is taking the throw everything at the wall and see what sticks approach in terms of just, what do we do with the right stick? I don't know. Let's just come up with a bunch of crazy ideas and hope that it kind of works.
I should note, I think you could play this without analog sticks if you really tried. It would just be a lot less comfortable.
Realistically, most of it is, it is a gimmick in a sense. The ability to sort of move things in a 360 degree angle is kind of not really demonstratedly important in the game. Like, using the radar is quite good. That kind of works very well in 3D, and I don't think anything else would have given you the smoothness that aiming a 360 degree radar around, it feels natural in places, but it's hard to deny that it kind of feels like they're just kind of being gimmicky. There's You get in the boat, which you have to actually paddle like you would expect an actual boat. So you do like the 360 degree, both rotating in kind of simultaneously. If you've ever been in a rowboat, you know what I'm talking about. Or you've ever been in one of those like rowing things, you just kind of rotate your things around. It is clear that this game is kind of a proof of concept tech sort of demo that Sony produced to sell DualShocks. They were trying to convince people to get DualShocks, and I will say in that regard they did very well with this game. It has elements, but it is a complete game. Like, I don't think you feel ripped off with this game, which is not true of some other tech demo selling games. I would say maybe something like the iToy, the iToy game. It's kind of a collection of like 12 decent to okay mini games, whereas this is actually a pretty thorough game. It is good, and this is the thing. The PlayStation didn't do super well with 3D platformers.
Yeah, it's either this or Spyro, and to be honest, I kind of prefer this game.
Because 3D platformers generally were the home of the N64. And that was... I do think that Sony must have looked at Mario and went, well, that 3D controller is really working for them. It's really making that game work, so we'll have to do something. And so they ultimately responded to it like 3 years later with this game.
Yes.
And it is different enough that you can't... I wouldn't say one removes the other. I really like the personality of this game. I really like the monkeys, apes. But
the whole aesthetic is super charming. But I just feel like this game was too little, too late.
Well, what I find interesting about this game, I think, is Sony themselves kind of were confused over what to do with it. Because they kind of... Ape Escape got 2 sequels, and they were both for the PlayStation 2. And I believe that they're both better. It's not to say Ape Escape is bad. It's just the PS2 games can have bigger areas. They can have more interesting tools. The graphics can be less pop-uppy. They benefit from being able to be refined. So that's fine. But Sony at the time, and this is 1999 and this general period, they were definitely going for more kind of like an older demographic. They were trying to get like college kids and later teens. Yeah. And they were trying to the PlayStation is cool, and if you're cool, you'll play the PlayStation and play Tekken and play Ridge Racer. And there's all these games like that. And then they're like, and also you can play Ape Escape. And it's like, huh? How do you fit Ape Escape into the Sony hierarchy of games? And that's kind of like, I don't think they knew how to sell it alongside the rest of their kind of marketing material. So people bought this because it was just like, cool, another good PlayStation game. But I don't think they ever really knew what to do with it.
This might be too far into the extreme compare, but 1999 was the same year as Silent Hill. So, which game do you think people played more?
Ooh. Well, Ape Escape was a game that not as many people played because you needed the DualShock.
You had to have the proto DualShock. Yeah.
And no, I think that people were slow on the uptake with that one. I don't think as many people actually bought into it, which made this game a little bit more obscure than it otherwise probably should have been.
This could probably be a whole discussion in and of itself, but was this around the era where companies were really attempting to push their console peripherals and additional controllers and upgrades and whatnot just to build?
Nah, I wouldn't say that happened just yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Around this time, the only other one I can really think of is Namco's Negicon, which they had for their racing games.
I love the N-Con. It's such a cool looking controller.
Oh, it's so good.
Awesome.
It's so awesome.
It amazes me that there just isn't a market for N-Cons, just still making them. But,
right. But yes.
But the thing is, as I said, I think that this game and the controller was just Sony looking at the N64 and looking at Sega's 3D controller and just being like, no, that analog thing, that's actually going to take off. We need to get ready for this. Our PlayStation 2 is going to have that. We need to make sure people are sort of in the mindset that we do have. Don't buy an N64. We have a 3D controller, and we deliver 3D controller platformers too. So don't buy anyone else's consoles, kids. Get this one. And like Spyro used the analog controller, and it works very well with Spyro because that's another 3D open area game. So you do get some mileage out of it. The last thing I'll say about Ape Escape is it includes some mini games, and all of those are actually really solidly put together uses of the analog controller. I love the skiing game. It's very, very difficult, but very unique, since you actually use the two sticks as your two skis, and so you're actually kind of almost realistically controlling a skier by pushing the skis together to kind of slow down, turning them simultaneously in different directions. Very, very clever stuff. And there's a punching mini game where the two sticks control the each fist. So it's kind of like Wii boxing, I think, in that regard. It's like just like trying to swing your fists around. And lastly, there is a dual stick shooter, kind of Robotron-ish, but not nearly as good as Robotron. It's just probably the weakest of the three games, but that's cool. And I mean, I don't know if we don't have too much else to say about Ape Escape, really. So where would you guys put Ape Escape?
I mean, as the showcase for Sony's dual analog controller, before it was the DualShock, I think it rates very highly. I think they, in many ways, surpassed what Nintendo was doing, what Sega was doing at the same time.
Yeah, so I mean, I think Ape Escape. I don't think Ape Escape really scared the other companies. Like, I don't think Sega or Nintendo really looked at Ape Escape and went, "Oh no, they're gonna destroy us with this." Like, I don't think they were shaking in their boots over it.
Sony was just really kind of catching up to Nintendo, really, with this. They had the analog controller.
Yeah, like, I find that interesting. I think that this is actually, and I was thinking about this earlier. If you look at PlayStation games, Ape Escape is actually one of the few PlayStation games that is a PlayStation game, an exclusive PlayStation game that doesn't get ported, doesn't get put anywhere else. This game you could only get on the PlayStation, and to date you can only get that. You can probably get it on it was ported to the PSP, and some things were changed around a little bit. And I'm assuming that it was available in one of the PlayStation marketplaces, because why wouldn't they? It's their game, and they put him in PlayStation All Stars. You can play as Spike, because of course that's what you want to do. Who doesn't want to play as Spike? Of course. You could put Jake in there too. Anyone remember Jake? That's Spike's blue-headed rival that you don't eat. Like, he's blander than Spike. But it is a genuine PlayStation exclusive. A lot of games that we remember the PlayStation for, or I remember the PlayStation for, stuff like Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy VII, even stuff like Tomb Raider. Some of these games were either actually just kind of ports from other systems but were more popular on the PlayStation, or were ported to other systems after the PlayStation. So in both cases, the PlayStation was just kind of like the popular version or the known version.
Yes,
whereas
in many cases, the technically best version.
Yes, it's on and off depending on which game it is. But with Spyro and Crash Bandicoot and good old Ape Escape here, which I think might be the trinity of PlayStation platformers in its way. The PlayStation 1.
The reason I kind of prefer this over Spyro is I kind of like Ape Escape's more playground kind of design better than Spyro's more kind of theme park sort of gameplay. They're both good. I just prefer Ape Escape.
The thing that I think is cool about Ape Escape is also the way it's designed. You basically play through a level, you keep playing through the game, and then once you get far enough, the game keeps giving you tools. You get new tools every few levels. Then the game basically sends you back to old levels where you're supposed to bring those new tools to capture the rest of the monkeys in the stage. So the game kind of has this interesting way of handling replayability by basically not remixing the stages, but by sending you back through the stages with new tools. But it doesn't kind of force you to go back in the same way. Like Spyro, you have to collect all the treasure to get like the last super secret level or whatever. But that's a pain in the ass. Like, it is not fun to do that. It is just laborious. Ape Escape is just get all the monkeys. You can get all the coins to unlock the final minigame if you want. But, you know, getting all the monkeys is actually very rewarding and very substantial. It's a collect 'em up that doesn't really feel like it's like, oh, you didn't get that Jiggy that was hiding in the other end of the game somewhere a billion miles away that you'll never find. Too bad. You don't get to see the end. Whereas Ape Escape is a collectathon that is actually plausible to collectathon, to actually get everything, which I think that's a really, really generous touch. Although the levels are distressingly empty once you capture the monkeys. Like, you can go back to the stage and there's no monkeys and you're just there and it's like, huh.
You could get the coins you need for mini games. I mean, if you want to play the mini games. You
should. The first 2 mini games are great, but I mean, once you collected everything, you can replay the stages and there's nothing there. It's just like you're just hanging out in this empty stage and these like barren levels. There's no monkeys. The life is drained out of the game. It's weird. Okay, well, I'm going to force a number out on this game. So we have Crash Bandicoot 2, and that is at rank 27 at the moment.
28, I believe.
So I guess Crash is at 28. And that's Crash Bandicoot 2.
As much as I do respect Naughty Dog's work on PS1, Ape Escape is beyond Crash 1, 2, or 3.
You know what? I think I'd be willing to live with that.
So, I mean, that's putting us up. Then we've got, this is a tough one, directly above it, Maniac Mansion.
Maniac Mansion?
Yeah, our list is crazy.
Whew.
Now, that
I don't know. Maniac Mansion is a really important game.
Massively so.
Yeah, our list is crazy.
But we don't want to bunch up our platformers.
Well, you don't have to arbitrarily not bunch them if it doesn't work. I mean, Ape Escape is a very interesting take on, I think, a platformer. Mostly because it works within the inner construct of a platformer, but it has a lot of twists that reward the basic concept of platforming. This game isn't about, navigating to the end of the level. That's not the goal of Ape Escape.
Yes.
And I think that's really nice that Ape Escape is just get to the monkey, get to the ape, get to the next one. And it's just rewarding to try and find these apes and capture them. And then it's cool because they can actually run away. They don't stand there. They will actually run to different areas. And you can stealth on them. You can crawl along the ground and then you can curl up in a ball and hope that the monkey doesn't see you. Because they're kind of stupid, I guess. But that's kind of cool that they've got this extra element in there. This feels like kind of it's like a sidestep for platformers, It's not... I don't think that many platformers really went with the Ape Escape style. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing.
It was quite its own thing. And with Sony being, the final entry into the analog control realm, I think they built a beautiful game. But so where might this rank?
Yeah, so that's the question.
I'm okay below Maniac Mansion.
All right? I'm pretty happy to they're both Crash Bandicoot 2 and Ape Escape are both PlayStation era PlayStation games, and I'm pretty comfortable with them being near each other because they are kind of similar in many ways without getting too far ahead of themselves. I don't think Ape Escape had like a defining impact on the genre. It's more like an interesting segue, rather than a sort of, because Maniac Mansion is like now point and click games are different. They're completely different now.
Yeah,
we've changed it. Ape Escape is like
Maniac Mansion changed point and click adventure games forever. Ooh. Tough.
But I'm comfortable. I think just above Crash Bandicoot 2 is the way to go, and that means that somehow the Blando Man Spike is going to defeat one of the more fun mascots of the PlayStation era. But the monkeys are kind of a bunch of crashes, so I guess that's fair enough. No dissents, I don't think.
I really couldn't think of much to say about either or, so yeah, I think it's a fair enough placement.
Yeah. I mean,
Well, Bob,
yeah.
Bob, you're
All
the
right.
Crash fan. I know you're a Crash fan, but you're gonna...
I'll live with it. I do like Ape Escape a lot, so I'm okay with it.
Okay. So, all right. So that is Ape Escape for the PlayStation 1, directly below Maniac Mansion, above Crash Bandicoot 2, Cortex Strikes Back. So that's locked away then, and that will be the end of that. I do recommend, if you've never played an Ape Escape game, I would recommend playing at least one.
Oh,
You don't have to play Ape Escape 1. You don't have to. Like, 2 and 3 are both pretty great, and, you know, they're slightly less archaic, because the PlayStation was... You could feel the PlayStation kind of struggling underneath with Ape Escape 1, where it's just like, I want to be better, but I can't. So the PlayStation 2 games do have that slight advantage. But I don't think they have a level inside of a giant dinosaur, so that's a shame.
Indeed.
That's all for this episode of HardcoreGaming101.net's Top Games Podcast. Special thanks goes out to @Gidzu and @PixelPedro on Twitter and 24-bit AJE on iTunes. Thank you guys for nominating those games, and thanks as well to those of you we haven't gotten to yet. You are loved and appreciated, and we will be getting to you when we can. Everybody gets at least one, at least for the time being. Thanks as well to my lovely co-host and compatriots, and to our editor, Jeff Rude, and our chiptune composer, Muteki, and of course, to the support and feedback of listeners just like you. You can support this podcast by making a small monthly donation at patreon.com/HG101. I know I did. And you can help us out by subscribing to HG101's fantastic YouTube channel, or by following @GCINX and @HG_101 on Twitter. But most importantly, help us claw our way into the podcasting firmament by getting on iTunes, subscribing to HG101, and giving us a 5-star review. Do it or flock off, Featherface. Until next week, keep keeping it real.